Hey there, friend, and welcome to my January 19th. I am actually kind of in the middle of my morning routine here. Wrote some stuff down, took a little break to write some things and sit with some things after reading my two books here, Daily Stoic and Tools of Titans. Because today things from both of those resonated with me. And that's the cool thing about reading both of those books, doing a tarot card pull, and just kind of letting, I'm almost guaranteed to get something out of it. It just depends on where it comes from. But today, I haven't even done the card yet, because I wanted to stop and write about those things, and I quickly wanted to just jump in, start my daily vlog here, say hello, and yeah, it's so interesting. I'm going to do my card pull to see if that brings up anything else, but then I'm going to share some of this stuff with you because I love it. Well, I'm happy that I waited to share a little bit here until I pulled the card because that definitely added to what I had already kind of gleaned from the readings. So with the reading specifically, here in the Daily Stoic, here, let me read this quote to you because I really like it, and yeah, I'll use the Stoics' wisdom here. A podium and a prison is each a place, one high and the other low, but in either place your freedom of choice can be maintained if you so wish. I really love that sentiment. I think for a lot of people that's kind of a struggle because it's well, your situation dictates so much of your experience, and that's definitely true, but the point there is that at the end of the day, all we ever have is our choice and how we respond to a given situation and our internal relationship with that thing. Which, interestingly enough, is exactly more or less like what the card was. So, again, we've got the Three of Swords. Now, with tarot, when I'm pulling the card, essentially what I'm doing is I'm asking a question or just kind of setting an intention for what I want guidance on. And so it just depends on the day. And today I was just kind of general guidance or some specific guidance towards just kind of continuing with the job search and kind of with some of the stuff that I shared yesterday. If you watched that, about the nature of the search and specifically for me. And this is all beautiful because this is actually going to be exactly what I'm talking about in my sit down portion today. So yes, all very kismet. But the Three of Swords, that suit is about thoughts and communication, just kind of things of the mind and mental faculties. And the Three of Swords is about a little bit of pain or struggle. And what are you going to do in that situation? It's not necessarily a bad card. It's just what are you going to do in the face of that when you do experience that struggle or that pain? What are you going to do? And so, reading from the one book here, the question is in the description: do we allow our experiences to control us, or do we take a first step toward healing? Like, how ridiculously similar is that to the passage in the Daily Stoic? I mean, it's literally the same thing, just in different words. So, as I had said, this is exactly what I'm going to be sharing today, or very much the energy of what I'm going to be sharing in my sit down, kind of like job search update, and both the good and the bad with that. Now, there was another really great nugget from the Tools of Titans, so I am going to mention that. And this in and of itself, it could have a ton of elaboration, and so I'm actually going to note it down for another video, because I really, really love this concept as well, and is, again, just very much a lesson that I've learned, and is kind of like serves to further elaborate or illustrate where I'm at in my own life. It was a segment from James Altucher, who I have read here and there. Just seems like a really interesting guy. I like his approach. Just it's sharing very openly, and he says in there too, essentially how he grew his readership was by sharing the things that he was scared of and the things that he was struggling with during the process, which is really cool, because that's kind of how I've wanted to shift my process, is just like sharing the journey, sharing the process, as opposed to coming from a place of more of like telling. So I really like that. But then one of the things he had said in there as well is, Tim asked him something about purpose, and he said, forget purpose. Like, many lives have been lost searching for purpose. And it's funny because, again, like I said, this very much aligns with like where I'm at in my life. And so my take on this, as somebody who has really wanted to find their purpose, my take on this is, rather than searching for purpose, know who you are. Like, that is if you're going to go on a search, that is the search you should be on. And because once you know that, once you know who you are, and I call it your true nature, capital T, capital N, your true nature. So it's like knowing your soul, your essence, however you like to think of that, but essentially knowing yourself on the deepest level possible, and then embodying that in whatever you do, like in as many moments as possible in your life. And that is the thing that is going to lead to happiness, joy, confidence, connection with others, feeling a sense of love for yourself, for others, finding that in relationship, both platonic and romantic, fulfillment, impact, like all the things that you want are wrapped up in knowing yourself. And it kind of goes back to the Daily Stoic quote too, and that sentiment of, you have a choice in every moment. That is the only thing that you have, is how you respond to things. And so I believe, and from my experience, when we end up unhappy, it's because we are making a choice, but it's not actually aligned with our true nature, who we truly are. But if we can align with that, if we can make choices that do reflect our true nature and who we really are. And I mean, that's literally micro choices, like in every single moment, like in a conversation, going into an interview, like how can you be yourself and be true to yourself more and more and more over time? So that's my thought on that. Like I said, I'm going to leave that there today. I'd be curious on what your thoughts about that are, or search for purpose, or anything like that. Now, the thing is, like, I've reached that point where, at least that I feel like, we'll always learn more, but like, I truly know myself now after a decade of searching for purpose. So I got there in a roundabout way, and I do believe that I know my purpose now is to share and connect and to create things that allow big thinkers and deep feelers to have meaningful experiences, but in the end, to know themselves, because many of us don't for a very long time, or sometimes forever, which that's the point we don't want to reach. So anyways, capping it. I want to keep going there, but today, like I said, I'm going to film a sit down on kind of like update on where I'm at, what I was doing wrong with the job search, and what I'm leaning into for this kind of like next portion of it. Today, I'm kind of going to do just talk a little bit about where I'm at with the job search, just kind of like an update on that specifically, but also more broadly talk about when we are trying to achieve something or searching for something and not being able to be present, or struggling with being present and finding joy in the present moment or our current circumstances. That's kind of the high level for today. And yeah, I'll just share some specifics within there. So with that, I guess to go into, like what, because I haven't done an actual job search update or kind of like life update, and I did the year in review was the last podcast that I posted. And that's really kind of the only thing that I've done here in January for the podcast. So the past month for me has been kind of a two halves, because those 2 weeks at the end of the year, I just took off, stopped doing any type of work stuff, any type of looking for jobs, any type of that, just kind of like rest and relaxation time. So just kind of leaning into that. And so kind of unplugged from that whole thing during that time period. It was really nice, really great to be able to have that space. Also, especially for those of you that have your own businesses, I highly encourage, because I've talked to friends within this time period, both like before and after, but I highly encourage that you consider taking that time off. It can be so easy to never stop when you have your own business, because if you're not working, you're not making money, there is no progress, like that whole mindset. But just taking that space can be a reset that you didn't even know you needed. A lot of times that's how it feels for me. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll do this. Yeah, it feels good to like take some time off. But then while I'm taking that time off, or after I take that time off, I'm like, whoa, shit. Like that was really beneficial for me. So yes, I would strongly suggest considering that, because I've been there where I haven't done that, and I know the difference of what things look like. I actually had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and she kind of had a rough end of the year, but took those last 2 weeks off for like from her business and stuff like that. And she made some pretty big leaps in how she wants to approach this year. And the conversation that we were having there was creating space, pausing, and what that does for you, especially creatively, not just from a rejuvenation, recovery standpoint, but also from a creativity standpoint. Many times, if not always, really great creative insights come from space. They don't come from force. Now, that's not to say you should always just like wait around for insight. I'm specifically speaking to the person that doesn't give themselves much space. So just a huge advocate for that. In our conversation, I was telling her, I'm like, that, space is not in my my being. It's not my default way of approaching life. And so that's a lesson that I've learned over and over, and continue to have to be really intentional about creating space, because that's hard for me. And this is often the case for, humans in general, especially in the Western world and a capitalistic society, but specifically for big thinkers and deep feelers. If you are an empath, an HSP, like, those things usually lend itself towards this sense of, I need to be working towards something. I need to be achieving. Deep feeling achievers. If you guys have followed me for a while, or, been a part of my world, you'll have heard that term before, because these are things that often go hand in hand. So having that awareness that you have the tendency to be pushing and always trying to get to the next thing, get to the next level. Obviously, it's not bad to want results. It's not bad to want to create progress. But once it starts cannibalizing the growth and the progress, as well as making your experience miserable, or at least less enjoyable than it could be, now that's not so good. That drive to be making progress is not something that's desirable. So that's kind of a good transition into where I've been at with the job search, because the 1st of January hit, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to start shifting back into real life here. Got to the Monday, whatever it was, I think it was the 3rd, and just kind of like slowly got into that week. I wasn't like pressuring myself to like really jump right back on it. But it did feel good because I had rested. I did have some energy to really kind of just like start the snowball, right? Like gather up that snow, pack it tightly, and be ready to start rolling it down the hill. That was kind of the beginning of the year for me. And so, yeah, I just got my back in the headspace of looking for jobs, connecting with people. And it happened kind of slowly that week, where I just slowly, like I said, slowly started getting back into things. I did start this daily vlog in January, calling Vloguary, which full credit to Jessie for the name, which I don't even know if she thought that was a good name. She just kind of threw it out there as soon as I was like, what could I call this thing? But yeah, so that I was kind of focused on that. And I think there is still a deeper internal resistance to the job search process. There was a deeper avoidance, partially because I was feeling overwhelmed with how to go about doing it. Do I apply for things via LinkedIn and Glassdoor? Do I connect with more people? Do I scour my LinkedIn and connect with people individually? And I kind of let those things start to overwhelm me, which, again, for anybody that's been around for a little bit, especially within the past few months, I've been more open about this. Past like 6 months, I'd say, overwhelm for me, it quickly becomes a self-sabotage mechanism. So I have that awareness now that's kind of a trigger for me. It's like, if I feel overwhelmed coming on, I make note of that. And it's like, oh shit, okay, this isn't a good sign. And by the way, I call this pattern disruption. So my pattern is, once I start to get overwhelmed, that can lead to self-sabotage. So for me, I interrupt the pattern with that awareness, and I try to shift into something that is going to serve me better. And so for me, that was kind of the process that happened after that first week of January, where just like, okay, I didn't make nearly as much progress as I wanted to on these things this week, having a sense of overwhelm, acknowledging all of this. Now, what do I do? And so kind of, yeah, just notice that, worked with that a little bit, tried to get clear on like, okay, I definitely want to connect with people. I think that is, especially given the gap in my resume, like that is the thing that I really want to go in on. The people that know me know my character and know what kind of worker I would be, kind of asset that I would be for a company. And that just feels like I have a way better chance with that than just kind of like, randomly applying into the abyss, so to speak. And so I kind of took that into the next week, that intention of like, okay, I'm going to connect with people. That's going to be kind of the main thing I do. And then applying will kind of be on the back burner, just like in the evening, I'll throw in a couple applications, or later in the week, or whatever, however it ended up working out. And I still, it's like a little better with that, but still struggled a little bit. Kind of got to the end of the week and just didn't feel like I did what I could have. I wasn't like beating myself up necessarily for not doing enough. I was kind of there, but for like a good reason. Like I definitely could have done more. And by the way, this is something that I think is really, really important for everybody, but again, especially for big thinkers and deep feelers, being able to discern that for yourself, that inner dialogue of, am I doing enough? Because, and so there's a spectrum here. And by the way, I was talking to another friend about this recently, and she is on the spectrum. So of like, I'm working too much, too hard, being too hard on myself is one side of the spectrum. And then the other side of the spectrum is just kind of waiting for things to happen, just kind of sitting back. And for any of those of you that are familiar with energies, that's far, like toxic masculine is on the end of like do, and toxic feminine is on the end of BBB and not do anything and just expect things. So being able to honestly assess where you're at on that spectrum is, I believe, one of the most impactful pieces of information that you can have about yourself. And this ebbs and flows over time. You can be on this spectrum in a certain place for periods of your life, seasons of your life, and or in moments. And so for me, in this instance, and I'm kind of waving my hands around a lot here on video for those that are listening via the podcast and not watching on YouTube. But I've created a spectrum here. But in the middle is kind of this perfect balance point of, I am doing enough, I'm doing what I can, but I'm also surrendering to the process and whatever the outcomes that are happening, whatever is happening, that it is what it is, so kind of like finding this perfect center point and being very balanced internally in terms of the way that you are relating to your experience in that circumstance. So not being too hard on yourself for not doing enough or too little, but knowing that you are showing up and you're taking the steps needed, and that's all that you can do. And just being at peace because you're in full surrender to whatever the outcome is. So for me, in this particular instance, I was a little behind that balance point. where I truly, I wasn't doing enough. Like the self-sabotage had kicked in to an extent. It wasn't full blown, but it was still hindering me. And so this kind of came to a head last week. I am recording this on January 19th, so it's a Wednesday. And yeah, this came to a head a week ago, literally, where I pretty much just had a meltdown. And there was a 24-hour period, I believe it was from Tuesday afternoon to Wednesday afternoon last week, where I was just like in just the worst of moods regarding all this. Or I was just like, this just sucks. Like, it's not going to work out. Never going to get a job. I don't know enough people. I don't know the right people. Nobody's going to trust I can do this stuff after like being out of the field for so long. Just like, I'm fucked. Was like basically the energy of it. And I was just like, so, when you just have all this like pent up energy and you're just like, ugh, it's just like bouncing around in you, and it just feels like dark and fucking, it's like when you see, the cartoons or whatever, when there's just like a big old scribbly tangled dark mess. That's like what I felt like inside. And so again, for those of you that have been following along with the vlog, you will have seen that because I shared what my experiences were on that day. And I was just very open. I was very raw. I'm like, this is where I'm fucking at today. And it's a mess and I hate it and it sucks. I did acknowledge both in that vlog share, but also with Jessie when I vented to her. I acknowledge just like, I know this is just like a moment. I know I'm just having a day, but it just feels so intense in this moment. And it's like, and I was like, I know this isn't actually how I feel about the process overall. I know that I'm grounded and I know things are going to be okay, but fuck this. So yeah, like full awareness, but also like full in it, which, yeah, I think is like where we need to be. Like, I'm happy that I was able to be in that place, so like having that general awareness, but also not invalidating my very real experience at the time. But with that, because I allowed myself to feel that, because I vented a little bit, and Jessie, obviously gracious partner that she is, to listen to that and reflect some meaningful stuff back to me, that seemed to move the energy. And so it was right after that I posted on Facebook and LinkedIn, and was like, just kind of a blast, right? It was like, hey, looking for a job. This is new to me. Haven't been in this position since I left college. Please help me. I need your support. This is not an area that I'm comfortable with or familiar with. And the response to that was very supportive. It felt really good to have that support in a moment where I'm feeling like A, kind of just like spinning, right? But B, also just like not in a place of comfort for me. It's like I've developed a comfort zone and confidence in a lot of areas over the past, handful of years, almost decade now, of like working for myself and doing all that stuff. But this is an area that is totally outside of my comfort zone. And so, yeah, it felt good to have support while kind of feeling like I'm floundering in that. So yeah, so after I posted that, after I started getting some response, and Jessie shared it, she had a bunch of people respond on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So it just felt really good. Even like, these are not first connections, but they're connections through my partner. It just feels really good to receive that support. So there were two main takeaways that I had from this. And then I'll kind of go into how this is affecting my approach currently, where I'm at with things currently, and why I'm feeling much better about things. But the two takeaways were, One, it's very easy, and I'm speaking for myself specifically. This is a very human tendency though as well. But like for me, if I'm not seeing things in front of my face in terms of outputs or progress or outcomes, even if I'm showing up and doing the things, or for the most part, as I alluded to, could have been doing a little bit more than I was, but mostly doing the right things and nothing is kind of showing itself. It's incredibly frustrating to me, and I get demoralized quickly if I'm not seeing that. It feels shitty to feel like you're taking the right actions, but for there to be no tangible response from the outside world, from external stimuli to be like, yes, good job, you're doing the thing, keep moving. So I'm noting that for myself. I am taking that into consideration because, yes, that is helpful. It is helpful to see those things, but the reality of it is that we're not always going to have that. We're not always going to see proof that things are working or that we're doing the right things. So kind of like really noting that for myself, because I want to be the type of person that shows up regardless of what's happening in the outside world, as long as I know in my heart that I am doing the right thing, regardless of what that is. That can be in any arena. As long as I know that I'm showing up in the way that I am capable of, that's all that I can control. That is the only thing that matters. And you can really, at that point, only surrender to outcome, like, and when that is going to happen. So that was part one. And then part two is just like, do the thing, do the easy thing, the low hanging fruit, the simple thing. Guys, that Facebook post took me 5 minutes to write, and I blasted it out, and I was just overthinking it, right? Like, that was so easy. I could have done that, tactically, maybe, probably wouldn't have been the best thing to do the first week of the year with people getting back in the groove and worrying about their own shit. But like that second week, I could have easily done that on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And I just didn't, right? Like I was letting that overwhelm kind of stop me from taking action. So do the thing, do the easy thing, the low hanging fruit. And because sometimes that is going to have a disproportional effect in terms of, like, it doesn't always have to be hard. You don't always have to do difficult things in order to get a great outcome. In that case, the act was very simple. It was very straightforward, very easy, but it had a large output. It had a big impact. And so kind of a third thing, or corollary to these or whatever, would be ask for help, ask for support. It's like, put yourself out there and ask for help. And I know this is something that big thinkers and deep feelers struggle with. So again, ask for help when you need it. People care about you. If you've created meaningful connections in your life, if you've been a good person, which is probably the case if you're here and you're listening to this, ask for help. Let your people help you. You don't always have to be the one helping. Yes, we like that role. It feels good. It's in our nature. But at the end of the day, if we're not letting people help us when we need it, we are robbing them of an opportunity to get that same satisfaction that we always like to have when we help people. So leaning into that and reminding myself of that was really helpful as well. All right. So then, to just kind of arrive at where I'm at today and kind of like, okay, like, how am I putting those takeaways into action? So essentially, like, after all that happened, I made a list in Excel or Google Sheets of the people that I reached out, the jobs that I wanted to apply for, because I kind of wanted to do it in an assembly line fashion, where I wasn't just trying to do everything at one time. So I took, like I said, all the names down and took all the jobs down, kind of gathered all that data to finish up the week, spent the rest of the week connecting with people and having those conversations, thanking them and just getting more information, all that stuff. And then this week has been about taking that list and actually working through it, applying for those things, letting those people know, starting to field some phone interview requests and to start to set those things up. So that's the specifics of it, but the higher level general overview and energy of it is, and this really did shift since last week. I had the awareness that I was just treating this process I was approaching it with a fear and scarcity mindset from a place of, I need to get a job, I need to get a job, I need to get a job for any and all of the reasons, right? Like they're all valid, but at the end of the day, all that matters is like the way that you're approaching it. And that was it. It was like this desperation approach, or like, I need this so badly. So again, I'm on video here and I'm like clenching my fists because that's kind of how I'm thinking, like I just need this thing. And for those of you that are into manifestation and things like that, like that's the opposite of how you create shit. That's the opposite of how you bring good things into your life. It is not by force. It is not by this fear and scarcity energy. So I acknowledged that, and I was like, this is not how I want to approach things. Like, what am I doing here? I want to lean into this being some, enjoyable in some regard. I want this to feel lighter. I want this to feel more playful. It doesn't mean I won't work hard. It just means I don't want this to feel so demanding and so heavy. So with that, I kind of made the conscious, intentional choice to have that mindset about it and to have that perspective of like, you know what? At the end of the day, I'm going to get a job sometime, somehow. And so stop worrying about it. Like, stop trying to force that. Me trying to force things into existence or make it happen sooner is only going to put more pressure on myself. It is only going to make me more frustrated. It's not actually going to help anything. We often think that we need to use fear to drive action, motivation, discipline, when in fact that is not the case. And if anything, the opposite from the most impactful approach. It does work to an extent. But if we can shift the fear into excitement and possibility, because they're two sides of the same coin, then things start to open up. And again, for those of you that you resonate with manifestation and how that works, that's how that happens. Even if that isn't your thing, the thing that I always come back to is like, okay, but it's still, at the end of the day, it changes your experience of it. So that should be enough. It's like, now I'm not going into things feeling so like, like, why? When is it happening? Like feeling so frustrated and heavy. Now it's just like, okay, well, yeah, had that fun interview, clearly not fit, or they don't think I'm experienced enough, or like, and you just move on. You just have to drop it. And so I talked a little bit about this on the vlog. I filmed a little bit of my morning routine before this as well. So those viewers on YouTube kind of get this insight into how I started my day and talking a little bit about this. But it was actually pretty meaningful because I read the Daily Stoic, and there was the quote was from Epictetus, and it is, "A podium and a prison is each a place, one high and the other low. But in either place, your freedom of choice can be maintained if you so wish. The idea being that that is all we have, is how we respond to something. We don't get to choose what happens in the outside world, and we never will. So as I was saying, like, if that's the case, then you just have to roll with it, or you let it consume you. And that's up to you. And what was really kind of fun is that I ended up pulling a card as well, because I do a tarot card pull in my morning routine as well. And the way that I use tarot is simply for guidance and to get in touch with my intuition. Don't use it for future telling or anything like that. And so all I do, like when I want to pull a card, is just ask for a little bit of insight or guidance in whatever area. And I asked for today was essentially just like general guidance slash something that could benefit kind of some of my takeaways from having a phone interview yesterday and not feeling a little bit frustrated with that, but also then at the end of the day, being able to release it and just like let it go, and just how I can move forward and continue to kind of be in this place of surrender. And I pulled the Three of Swords, which the Three of Swords is, swords are about like thoughts and communication. It's very like of the mind and mental faculties. And the Three of Swords specifically is about a little bit of struggle. And it was funny because as I was reading the little piece in the book about what the Three of Swords means, the the question in there was, you may be confronted with struggle, but how are you going to respond to it? Are you going to let it crush you, or are you going to move forward with it and figure out how to help you learn and heal? So quite literally the same exact sentiment that came from the the Daily Stoic, and just in general resonates with my process. And I was already planning on recording this today. So yeah, all very kismet. I am taking that message to heart. I wanted to share that with you and just let you know that it's a fucking struggle. It's always hard. It's not easy. Nobody does this well, I would say. Talked about with the friend yesterday. I was like, it's so funny because we can know these things conceptually, but as soon as we find ourselves triggered by whatever our own fears or wounds or scarcity has, like wherever that lies in us, like when those things are triggered, it's just so easy to fall back into these patterns. So anyways, yeah, just wanted to share a little bit more about where I'm at with that. But it's a practice. It's constantly reminding myself each and every day, I'm doing what I can do. If I can honestly say it, I'm showing up. That's literally all that I can do. And so just keep doing that. And then one of the things that I want to add in is actually doing a little bit more visualization around this. And I'll finish on this here, but I'm listening to Dave Grohl's book, The Storyteller. And he talks about how he essentially like manifested his rock star success. He's kind of like half serious, half jokes about it, but he like legitimately did some crazy shit when he was a kid to kind of like really deeply visualize that happening. And I do really believe in the power of that, just because of like where it aligns our energy. And so for me, I have not been doing that intentionally, but I do want to start doing that either in the morning or at night, or maybe both, even just taking like a few minutes to visualize where I want to be, what type of position I want to be in, how that's going to look in a daily, from like a day-to-day standpoint. So yeah, just kind of like really leaning into what feels good, leaning into excitement, and leaning into possibility, and knowing that the best thing possible for me in this chapter is on its way. It will be here, just a matter of time. But that's it for today. Thank you for hanging out. I would love to know your own thoughts about, my process, and like anything that resonated with you, but also if you're going through a similar time or have gone through similar times, what has worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, what have you learned, anything that you want to share along these lines. I would totally, totally welcome. You can either drop me a line on Instagram at benjamin.m.fritz, or if you are here and watching on YouTube, obviously just feel free to hit me up in a comment below. And regardless of what platform you are on, thank you for sharing your time and your energy with me. I totally appreciate it, as always. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Much love.